They sold it in New York, in pieces, to whoever turned up. Late in 1843, the machinery, the tooling, the unfinished work, the most liquid assets, which is the phrase the lawyers use for the things that can be turned back into money fastest. The Patent Arms Manufacturing Company of Paterson, New Jersey. 7 years old. Closed. In those 7 years, we made about 2,350 revolving pistols, about 1,450 revolving rifles and carbines, 462 revolving shotguns. I can still give you the numbers. I gave them to a great many people who did not want them. I was 29 years old and I had been right. That is the part I need you to hold on to. The gun worked. The idea was sound. A cylinder that turns when you cock the hammer and locks true against a single barrel. That is not a wrong idea. It is the idea everyone uses now. And it failed completely. And it failed because of a series of specific people in a specific order, each of whom said no for a reason that was not stupid. I have never been able to tell this as one story. It only comes to me as a list. So here is the list. The army did not refuse me outright. That would have been cleaner. They bought. The war against the Seminoles in Florida gave me my first real sale, revolvers and the new revolving rifles both. And the soldiers who used them praised them. A man with 5 shots against a man with 1 is not in the same fight. Then they took them apart. The early rifles were hammerless. I was proud of that. It was 60 years ahead of anything else anyone was making. It was also completely unfamiliar to men who had handled exposed hammer guns their whole lives, and a curious soldier with a screwdriver and no manual will open a lock to see how it works. Broken parts. Stripped screw heads. Guns that would not fire. I reworked it. Put the hammer back outside where they could see it. The problems continued. The verdict came back that the arms were excessively fragile and prone to malfunction, and I want to be honest with you about this one, because it is the only refusal on this list that was entirely my fault. Close clearances. A folding trigger. A multiplicity of small parts and springs more appropriate to a fine timepiece than to a thing carried through a swamp. I built a watch and asked men to fight with it. And then they did not pay for the Florida pistols. That was what actually closed the plant. My cousin. He ran the company. He signed the checks, and he stopped signing mine. Twice, he forbade me from using company money for liquor and dinners. He objected to the wardrobe. He objected to the gifts I sent to men who might buy. I thought he had no understanding of the business at all. My view, and I held it my entire life, and it made me rich in the end, was that a man does not buy a machine, he buys the person selling it. And a potential customer who has dined well and drunk well will sign what a sober one will not. Selden thought I was spending the company into the ground on my own vanity. We were both correct. That is the thing about this refusal that took me years to see. The spending was the marketing, and the marketing was the only thing that ever worked for me. But I was doing it with money the company did not have, on a product that was breaking in the field, and a treasurer who lets that continue is not a loyal partner. He is an accomplice. He was right to stop me. I have never once been grateful for it. This one I did not see coming, because I had already won. After Paterson failed, I went to the water. Underwater mines, electrical detonators of my own design, and a waterproof cable, tar-coated copper, that would carry a current under a river without failing. In 1842, I destroyed a moving vessel with one of them, in front of the Navy and in front of President Tyler. Congress appropriated funds. It worked. It worked completely. And then a congressman from Massachusetts, who had been President of the United States 20 years before, stood up and said it was not fair and honest warfare. He called my device an unchristian contraption. That was the end of it. I would like to tell you, I argued. Mostly I remember being astonished that the objection was moral at all. Nobody had ever refused my work on those grounds. They refused it because it broke, or because it cost too much, or because they had no money that season. This man refused it because it was wrong. He was, I think, the only one who ever did. The cable outlived the argument. Samuel Morse ran his telegraph lines under lakes and rivers and bays on it, and used the battery from one of my mines to send a message from Manhattan to Governor's Island when his own was too weak. $50 a mile. The thing built to sink ships ended up carrying words. By 1844, I had money coming in again. Cartridges. Cable. Not a fortune, but enough to start something. So I went out to raise the rest, to bring the Patent Arms Manufacturing Company back. I could not secure funds from other investors. I could not secure them from my own family. There is no dramatic scene here, and I will not invent one. There is only a man of 30 going from room to room with a proposal that had already been tried once and had already lost everyone their money, and every person in every room being able to do the arithmetic. I want to be plain about what that means, because it is the least understood part of my life. Between the auction in 1843 and what happened in 1847, I did not own a gun factory. I did not own a share of one. The company that carries my name today did not exist, and the one that had carried it was being wound up by other men. A creditor of mine, John Ehlers, went on selling the pistols we had already made, about 500 of them, for years afterward. He was selling my guns. I was not. 4 years. That is not an anecdote. That is a third of my working life at that point. I filled it with tinfoil and copper wire. The 4th of January, 1847. A gunsmith's shop in New York City. A captain named Samuel Walker had come looking for me. Not sent by the War Department. Not answering an advertisement. He had used the Paterson revolvers in Texas, and he had been in a fight where 15 men beat about 70, and he had worked out for himself what the thing was for. He ordered 1,000, and then he told me what was wrong with it. 6 shots, not 5. Enough power to stop a horse, quicker to reload. Every one of those corrections came from a man who had carried the gun, not from a man who had reviewed it. I did not have a factory. I had to hire Eli Whitney's son to build them in his armory. Read the list again and notice what it actually says. The Army refused me because my product was bad. Selden refused me because my spending was bad. Adams refused me because he thought the work itself was wrong. My family refused me because the numbers said so. 4 refusals, 4 sound reasons, and not one of them was about whether a repeating pistol was a good idea. The idea was never the problem. The idea was correct in 1836, and it was correct in 1847, and nothing about it changed in between. What changed is that one man who had used it came and found me. I died in 1862, one of the wealthiest men in the United States, and I have heard myself described ever since as an inventor who succeeded. I was an inventor who failed for 11 years and then met a customer. I do not know what to do with that. I never did.